Kari had the idea for Pilea while she was sitting in meditation. She has sort of our mother plant. And so all of
Really?
us on the team now have our own little, from the same plant,
A little
our own little
clone.
clippings. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Because they just
epic.
pop out of the ground. So you can take it and propagate.
Very cool. Good stuff, man. We can talk plants offline. I've got a whole garden out back going crazy right now.
I will learn from you. We're trying to not kill succulents here. That's where we are right now.
You are now entering preFORM. Prepare to perform. A podcast created to explore the inner workings of high-profile performers. Conversations reveal what separates them from the average human. Buckle up. I would like to introduce my next guest. He is the CEO of Pilea, a platform designed to equip and empower members of the startup community to become mindful leaders. As CEO, he helps founders build without burnout to drive sustainability in their productivity, health, and well-being. Enjoy the conversation with Matt Thieleman from Pilea.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's one of those things that only in conversations like this do I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, it all makes sense about how I'm here and about where I'm going. So in college, I studied a major that is now defunct at my college called Human Development and Social Relations. It was a combination of psychology, sociology, and anthropology. I picked it because I didn't want to do research, to be frank. So folks in either one of those, either in the psychology department or sociology department, they went deeper into research. And I really just liked having conversations and getting out in the real world. And so what I got to do in that work was go out in the community in Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I went to school, meet with folks in the community, talk with them to understand their strengths or understand what's going on within sort of their cultural environment, and write papers and have conversations about it and do presentations. And it really just got me to sort of, I'd say, mix it up with people I didn't know and really get to know them. And then from there, share what I learned. And that was really valuable for me going forward.
Why was it that you went to study the language of Spanish and do a little bit of, study abroad? What was that draw for you? Just out of straight curiosity, or did you think that was going to add another skill set?
I had been interested in going abroad. By the way, so more than 90% of people at Kalamazoo College go abroad. That was one of the things that brought me there. It's actually like very much built into the curriculum and into to the college. So like I had to write an essay, and then writing an essay, they said yes, you get to go to Spain. I didn't have a real reason for going. I had been interested in going abroad. When I got to Kalamazoo, I imagined I would go to more of a developing country than instead of Madrid. I imagined going to South America or something, but I didn't want to take as much Spanish as was required at our school to go to South America. And so I was like, well, I'll take this much. And a lot of my friends are going to Madrid. I had no idea how different it would be to live in Europe compared to the US. I was like, oh, it's basically the same thing. It's like a city, and I want to go explore. And I got there, I swear, in the first day, I was like, holy crap, what and where am I? I had this, I remember taking a taxi from the airport or the bus station to the house that I was staying at. And I just kept looking up at the buildings around me. And I said, if I ever get tired of these buildings, something is wrong with me, because this place is just magnificent. And I was there for 6 months. About 4.5 months in, I remember this moment when I was riding back from school. I got off of the bus and I was crossing the street. And it was like one of those, like they show like New York, a big city intersections where like everyone's just walking and passing and like no one's paying attention. And I had that moment when I realized that I forgot where I was. And I looked up again in the amazing buildings and said, "Oh man, I'm here again." And I got caught up in the world.
Wow.
So yeah, that just I had a desire to travel, and that just rekindled it and showed me how meaningful it is to get around other cultures and to learn and be around amazing food and all of this stuff that I couldn't get just from living in Michigan where I grew up.
Did you feel like that moment you had in that intersection, which is really present moment awareness, and a lot of us, we battle with staying in the moment versus allowing our minds to wander, whether it's on the past or into the future. Do you feel like that was a transitional point for you, which ultimately, as you fast forward a little bit, gets you more into a mindful space, a mindful perspective where you start to utilize that practice and that tool in your profession and into your entire career?
At the moment, I didn't have a word for it. But as we talk about sort of how did I get here, I think my whole life has been around that. It's funny, when I started, quote, teaching mindfulness, or when I had the idea, which was 2014 and 2015, I joke, but it's not a joke. I had never really sat down to meditate before in my life. And I use air quotes there. I didn't have any language for it. I also, not a joke, I sort of replicated what the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did when they sat down and put their fingers together and said Om. And I thought that was a meditation, but I thought there was something more than that. I didn't realize until I was, 30, nearly 30, that it just meant sitting, we could just sit, or I could be here with you and be actively practicing returning into the moment. So yeah, when I look back, it's moments like that I described in Spain. It's moments as an athlete. It's sort of embedded in my being, but I didn't know then that it was mindfulness. So I can't say that any of those were transformative or meaningful, except I look back and I say, this was always already happening for me. And now it makes sense. And also now I am not an expert still. This isn't like I suddenly made it. It's, every day I'm that teenager walking across the street and forgetting he's in Madrid.
Oh, I love that, man. It's a parallel universe too. It's really interesting. I think I spoke to you on, the pre-call, talking about how I grew up, where I grew up. And it was always kind of a part of life, being in the moment, being aware of your surroundings, and both internally and externally. It wasn't until 2013, 14 for me, when I became a grad student, where I was, quote, like you said, teaching mindfulness and never having formally meditated. So I'm like you, I didn't have the language. I didn't have any of the nomenclature to share what I had experienced for a long time as just being a human, and then putting it into the driver's seat to be able to teach it at the university level. So it's kind of like this trial by fire. You better figure out what the vernacular is so you can, turn it into a syllabus and then some curriculum and go from there. But when you look back on those moments, that's why I wanted to ask you, crossing that street, were you aware of it, where that's a true paradigm shift? But it sounds like, as you mentioned, you're always becoming, you're always evolving each and every day. So now when you're in the space that you're in, and we're going to get to that just a little bit, are you more intentional about that intersection and how it could potentially arrive again and again and again, and how you can take that perception and apply it every single day in all the decisions that you make as a CEO?
I sure hope so. I'll have to ask the people around me if that's true. And this is really funny. When you and I got off our first conversation, I talked to my partner. I said I was, really excited. I met this guy named Ford, and he's awesome. And I said, he's like me if I could have stood or withstood being in academia.
Amen. Amen to that.
I just sort of saw where my, where I was headed if I had decided I wanted to go down that path and continue to teach mindfulness and kind of trying to bring that to the sort of the educational world. And so I really admire the work you're up to, because I honestly didn't have the persistence or stamina or patience to kind of live an academic. Yeah,
definitely. I appreciate that. It's definitely a unique space to be in. So thank you for the introspection.
Yeah, man. I forget what question you asked me, but that brought that up for me.
Yeah, no doubt. I was just interested in how that intersection, as an analogy, how that translated into you're an adult when you're a student in Madrid, but you know what I mean. You start to become more of a conscious human into your 20s, late 20s, early 30s. And you said it wasn't until that moment where you realized what that intersection meant. Do you feel as though more intersections are starting to come to fruition? And with that, because of that past experience and your mindfulness training, are you better able to become the driver, become the decision maker in which route, which direction you want to take your next step, your next intersection?
I don't know if I'm going to answer, but I'll share what is happening for me right now as I'm thinking about more and more my intention in this life and however I lead is to live presence. And that is a shift for me over the past couple of years compared to when I first got into this work. It was sort of like, I'm just learning it. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to talk about presence and I'm going to work to teach people so that they can trust me, so that they know that I'm knowledgeable, so that blah, 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 blah. But also like, I need to share this with the world because it's so damn important. Like everybody understand it. And this was true for me when I started working as a coach as well. I wanted to coach everyone. And convince them that they needed coaching, right? Like, let's go have a crazy conversation. And what I'm started to learn is that to me, leadership is sometimes that's required. Sometimes speaking about a thing is required or helpful to give people a foundation. But more and more, my way is to simply be it, to practice falling back into. We'll use that story again. Remembering that I'm in this amazing city, and every moment in front of someone, remembering that I'm in the presence of a divine being who has amazing gifts. Remember that I am right now, I am inhabiting this body. Right now, I am having feelings that none of that is real, and simply we're here. And my belief is that if I can hold that more and more often, even if I don't tell people that they will feel it, the universe will feel it, and that good stuff will happen, I suppose.
I love it. That's absolutely phenomenal. And, being the change you want to see, we know who said that originally. You got to be the change you want to see in the world. It's just such an interesting time right now to hold that type of perspective, because there's a lot of noise among the signals, and to sit quietly with yourself, a lot of that frequency will start to arise, within your own practices, but also working with others. So I wonder, will you get to that space of recognizing immediately when your frequency is not aligning with someone else's and someone else's is not aligning with the next? Because the platform that you're currently running, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but to me, it seems as though the main idea is to have a collective consciousness, a collective community, to where there's codependency, but not in the traditional form of that is often perceived as a negative. Is that the way this is trying to lay itself out to be a service to the world?
The word that I use is we're creating a movement. And with that requires a community. With that requires people standing up and saying, this is what I believe in, and come join us. So it isn't, and there's like this tension that is like this like universal sort of comedic tension of me practicing being the thing, and also knowing when is the right time to speak up and to do that with full force. And at the same time, I'm not perfect at that. I would say I'm like a 2 out of 10 or something like that right now about that. But a movement is what I really think about. And so, by the way, my personal mission is to connect a coach to every founder in the world. And so that's what I'm working on over the next 10 years. And I realized, only like a year, I'm really fast learner. It took me a year to figure out I couldn't do that myself.
That helps with the mindfulness training, to be clear.
Yeah. So I realized, I need other people's help. And also I want other people's help. And actually, the world improves when I stop trying to do it all myself. And that has been a lesson that, again, took me 30 something years to learn. So that's a long and roundabout way to say, yes, I think, what it is about pulling us all up into this sort of increased consciousness, if that's the language we're using, around a thing that I think is really important, which is building the businesses that I hope will change the world in a positive way over the next 50 years and maybe save the world. Yeah, that's a good part to stop now. I got something else working on in my mind, but I'll think about it.
We can go there, or I can just put this in right now, because I think it's interesting when you say an empowering statement like change the world. If I'm a listener on a podcast and I'm hearing this episode right now, I'm wondering, what will this CEO do to change the world, right? Because up until this point, you and I know, especially what you're doing, and through homework, I know what you're doing. But share with the listeners from that 30,000 foot view what this platform Pilea is all about. Why does it exist? Who is it helping? And how will this, as you mentioned, change the world, make it a better place?
I'm going to assume that most of your listeners aren't fully embedded in sort of the startup and venture capital world in the way that I am. So I'm going to back up and I'll talk about it a bit. So as I said, my personal mission is to connect a coach to every founder in the world. Our mission at Pilea is to create a world in which sort of humans are fully expressed in the work that they do, in which everyone is a leader. And we have a very particular idea of what leader means. I've spoken a bit about it. And in which specifically, as we're thinking about the venture capital world or the startup world, in which returns in any business, essentially, I would say, are thought of as holistic rather than dollars in, dollars out. How do I make the most money? It's how is this business or the work that we're doing impacting the world, the environment, the people who are working in it, its customers, and the people who have started the business, and sort of in a holistic way. And we do that by focusing on at first, and then it grows from there, founder health, founder well-being, with the idea being that if the person starting a company that has the potential to change the world in a way that few companies before 10, 15 years ago had the ability to change the world so quickly as they do now, that was a kind of roundabout way. I have an assertion that the companies that are funded and founded right now over the next 5 years will change the world fundamentally over the next 50. They'll determine the future of the world because technology is moving so quickly. A company like Airbnb or Uber has an impact on literally billions of people very, very quickly. And so where I'm coming from is saying that the people starting those companies, if we can work with them on their own leadership development, on their own well-being from the start, then they'll build cultures of companies that support their people, that support the environment, that support the world, and that I would like to see. And that in turn will sort of have this ripple effect to change the world. So that's our premise. And what we're working in right now is a context in VC in which it historically has been, and I do think it's starting to shift, historically has been, frankly, a bunch of rich white dudes giving money to, it used to be Stanford, Wharton, Harvard MBA grads, and increasingly it's been 18-year-old, 19-year-old high school dropouts or college dropouts to build these technology things that make us a bunch of money outside of the stock market. And we're saying that doesn't have to be how things work, because as part of that also was, when I give you a bunch of money, the expectation is you'll do anything that is required and your team will do anything that is required to make the money back and more. And including, sometimes we don't, it's gotten a lot of press recently, but something like Theranos, right? Which is do anything that it takes, including being outside of the law unless you get caught, or just kill yourself in the process. And I don't want to use that term kill yourself like flippantly. It happens. And a lot of founders and venture-backed founders end up committing suicide because there's a ton of pressure in that. And if it isn't all that bad, but ways of burning ourselves out, right? So what we're up to that changes the world is creating a culture of business that eliminates burnout.
And what might that look like from your side to these founders? If I'm coming into your organization and I'm saying, look, Matt, I've been a part of this now for 8 years. I intend to be a part of it for the next 15 to 20. However, I've already seen degradations in my own health and wellness, my perspective, my discipline, my motivation, fill in the blank. What does it look like from your service to help me maintain not only my health and wellness, but to ensure that the longevity and sustainability of my platform continues?
So I won't speak for all of our coaches. All of our coaches, by the way, we have a network of dozens of incredible coaches who have a lot of startup experience or therapy backgrounds. The way that I might look at that personally as a coach is to start to understand what's really important to you. How do you want things to be compared to where they are right now? And so maybe for you, what we understand, I'm going to use myself as sort of this proxy example, is that you really believe that you're here to make an impact. And so we start to look at, okay, cool. What's the impact you want to make? How are things going right now compared to how you want them to go? And through really curious, my way is very loving investigation and questions, to understand how is what is happening in your life right now helping or hurting that vision you have of creating impact. And without making any of it wrong, really starting to see, if you're not sleeping more than 4 hours, how is that impacting your brain space? How is that impacting your energy? How is that impacting the sort of mood you show up with every day with your team? How is that impacting then the team culture and their dynamic? Are people afraid to talk to you now because you show up in a crap mood? How is it impacting your problem solving ability? Are you able to see around corners now? And I just use sleep as like a very small example there, but this is any number of things. It could be the structure in your life or your diet, or, I live in Colorado. I need to get outside pretty often. Are you taking breaks from this computer? Any number of things, but from a place of, I'm not right. I have no idea what is best for this person. I really need to get curious about what's important to them, what's going on with them, and how the current life is really helping them or hurting them from getting what they want.
That's really interesting. And how long would a tenure from a coach and a venture capitalist founder, how long would that be? I mean, are we setting up, protocols for a week? Are you looking to work with them for the entire fiscal year? Is it multiple years? What does the structure and protocol look like if someone was interested in working with Pilea?
Programmatically and service-wise at Pilea, we have things that are as short as, we're about to kick off a new program called Build Without Burnout that has a lot of these foundational tools that can be as short as 8 weeks.
Okay.
We have groups that are about 6 months. We have coaching engagements that are about that short. My two thoughts in this are, one, first and foremost, my fundamental belief is that if we are growing as humans, which I would assert every founder or CEO or business leader or change maker has to be, if we're doing things that are new, they are by definition impossible. And when we're doing impossible things, we need to grow. So if we're up to those things, we need a coach, period, full stop. And that might not mean for every minute or every week for the rest of your life, but it means my perspective is you ought to be committed to having or working with a coach always. So that is my very biased opinion that I'm coming in of everything. So our work at Pilea, everything that we build is based on from that perspective, which is not to say we force people into coaching. It is to say we help match people with what they need at any given period of time, knowing that that need will change, and knowing that as that need changes, there's always an opportunity to figure out what's next. And so there's always then an opportunity to work with another coach to kind of match where we are and what our ambitions are at the time. So it's a really long way to say, I think everyone should always be in coaching, but working with us, it can start as short as 8 weeks and be as long as you're continuing to do whatever it is that you're working on. And I highly recommend that folks start to think about this in the same way they think about like brushing their teeth, right? Like your teeth aren't going away and your ambitions aren't going away. So get some support.
I love it, Matt. I was just speaking to a colleague the other day about behavioral changes, and it takes a human years to develop a negative behavior. The idea to practice something once a week for 30 days for a behavior that's been solidified for decades and expect for it to just miraculously change, as you know, is not the way it's designed. But my question, I want to go back to the match.
Yeah.
How do you guys go about making these matches accurately and ensuring that the founder is comfortable with the coach, one, but of course the coach is comfortable with their client as well? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's such a great question and something we take a lot of pride in, because there are a ton of coaching organizations out there now. And the bigger ones that raised a lot of money that have grown very quickly, to me, are a bit, they're not as high touch as us. I want to speak poorly. We really take a lot of pride in making the right match. So the way that it looks like is someone might come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for a coach. Every single person talks to what we call our concierge. And that's a huge differentiator for us. Our concierge knows our entire coach network. It knows all of the other people we have ever sort of had friendly conversations with, which might not be coaches, which might be therapists or physical trainers or nutritionists or marketing help or dentists. I keep talking about teeth. But I've literally found a dentist for a client before.
Wow.
So anyways, if they're looking for a coach, they'll meet our concierge, really talk through what it is they want to get out of coaching, what their struggles are, where they want to go. And we work at a very intuitive level as well. So every coach in our network has coached at least one of the people on our leadership team, so that we get to experience their coaching. We have a number of at least 6 coach community calls every month, where I also get to see folks in action, asking questions, helping each other, coaching in real time. So we have a really good sense, we think, of our community. I've also done some coach training. I've taught coach training in the past. And so I've developed this skill very quickly to discern what sort of the essence of coaches, like who they are underneath everything, and the essence of people. I mean, it's part of my training. So, yeah, after that concierge call, we think about, and we'll meet as a team to talk about who are usually the 2 coaches in our network we think would be a really good match for this person based on what they want, what they think they want, and also what we think they need. Because those 2 things can be very different at times. And sometimes we pick coaches that we think are good matches for entirely different reasons. And we don't really know what this person might sort of mesh with. And once folks are matched with coaches, they do an actual sort of coaching session together, so that they can experience what it's like to be in coaching. It's like what I talked about earlier of there's a way to be presence and there's a way to talk about presence. And so we don't just talk about coaching, we get people into the experience of life-changing conversations. And what I find is when that happens, then people start to see the value and benefit. New possibility is created for them, which means, oh, if I could move all of this stuff that I think is in the way of me having the life that I want, what might life be like? And as that happens, as new possibilities are created, that's when people can start to make real change in their life.
Wow. The intention behind this platform is felt through virtual spaces. So I can't even imagine what the client is feeling with the coach, right? I mean, we're having a conversation. You're not necessarily coaching me. So I can only imagine from your training, not only what you've accrued, but also what you're disseminating to these coaches in leadership. Then they're bouncing it back to you in leadership. Then they're having these conversations, these initial touchstones with clients. I mean, this is awesome. This is such good information, but also application. And I think so many platforms, to your earlier point, have great information, but the execution of the application falls short. And so it's exciting from the outside to look in on Pilea and go, they're doing it right. And I just want to quickly tip my hat to you guys, because it's not easy. I mean, the work that it takes to make it sound so seamless, speaking from experience, is a lot of work behind the scenes. So I'm pumped for what you guys have to offer, man.
Well, thank you, brother. And I'll say that I was lucky enough to come on. So I became CEO this past January, but for more than 2 years before that, Kari and Lisa and team and the Jake and Howie, who are the guys at Alpha Bridge Ventures, who had this first idea about, supporting founder mental health and well-being first. They did a lot of the groundwork, and we just do a lot of listening, both on the client side and to our coaches. That I say that, I'm on our coach community calls so that I can understand and, see kind of the nuances of our coaches, but also I'm just learning from them all of the time. They're brilliant and amazing. And, their energy pushes us to constantly be better. So thank you. And, this is very much us learning and getting stuff not perfectly right a lot of the time.
Trial by fire, for sure. You learn more when you fail, right? I mean, what else is there to do? So it's really cool. And I want to leave you, or at least you leave my listeners with this question. What does this now look like in a decade? We're in 2021. We know what the current climate of not only the planet is, but the world and the inhabitants of that space. What does this look like from your side, from this coaching meets founder? You want to match every single one of them together. So fast forward 2031, where are we at, Matt?
So I'm giving myself to 2031 to connect a coach to every founder in the world. And if I imagine myself in a world in which it sort of is built into our culture of people, and not just in the US, but globally, that when we have a new big idea, we find ways to get supported in that. And by supported, I don't mean only like when stuff is hard, but like when stuff is going great, we continue to have someone help us reflect on how to continue to get better. What that looks like to me are conversations that allow us to be more human. And I want to be more specific than that, because that's pretty esoteric. I'm imagining that the full expression of our humanity, which is all of our weird feelings, all of our great feelings, all of our terrible feelings, all of our scary thoughts, all of our amazing, ambitious thoughts, which are also scary. Those are all welcome and appreciated and used more and more often. And in that world, I imagine that relationships are healthier. There's fundamentally less violence, that we are working together more than we're working separately, and that we collectively understand that my action singularly affects 7 billion people. I don't know how many people there are, 7 billion people globally.
Plus or minus.
Yeah, plus or minus. That's a good guess. And from there we say, okay, from this place of understanding that the stuff that I do impacts everyone, what do I want to do? And that when someone has a crazy idea, other people around them say, hell yes, let's go try that. Mm-hmm. Or when someone decides they're going to sing for no reason, other people around them don't tell them to stop. They say, cool, thanks for expressing yourself. And that sounds super utopic. I get it, but that, it sounds pretty fun too.
Without a shadow of a doubt, Matt. And I think even though that microphone is brand new, you can just drop it, man. I think it's just, that's just a wrap. You know what I'm saying? I really appreciate you coming on to preFORM and sharing your background, your expertise, your vision for not only where we are now, but in a decade. Because that, as we both know, goes very quickly. So thanks again, man.
Agreed. Thank you for it. It's such a blast.
Are you ready to optimize? perfor Humans is the evidence-based approach to optimal performance, health, and well-being. The platform collaborates globally with a variety of high-profile performers, corporate executives, elite athletes, first responders, and military personnel. perfor Humans offers private consultation and live webinars designed for individuals, small groups, and large audiences. Visit perforhumans.com for more information.